Welcome to the Four Visions Market Podcast, a space built on the principles of integrity and reciprocity. Together, we will engage in thought-provoking conversations about plant medicines, why these plants are coming out of the rainforest, jungles, and mountains after thousands of years, and what it means to be in right relationship with the ancestral wisdom cultures and guardians of these traditions. I'm your host, Mariah Ganessa, founder and director of Four Visions Market. This podcast is the natural evolution in our commitment to providing you, our tribe, with incredible resources to support you on your healing journey through plant medicines. Welcome home. Welcome back, Four Visions Tribe. Today on the show, I welcome two of my dear friends, Aras and Christy, founders of the sustainable fashion company, Christy Dawn, for a beautiful conversation about regenerative clothing and reciprocity with the earth. In Christy Dawn's own words, sustainability is not enough. Now it's time to heal. Christy Dawn has been pouring their love and resources into their Farm to Closet initiative, a radical experiment in reciprocal relationships in a conscious effort to deepen our intimacy with soil, farmer, and ultimately ourselves. In 2019, Christy Dawn leased acres of depleted land in Erode, India, and began the process of planting seeds and healing the soil, working directly with the farmers and artisans of Oshadi Collective. Over the last 3.5 years, they have nourished 80 acres of land where their cotton is farmed, woven, vegetable dyed, and block printed using ancestral methods in harmony with nature. They are directly addressing climate change and have successfully drawn down more than 1 million tons of carbon from the atmosphere. In today's episode, we talk about how Christy Dawn evolved into a lot more than a dress company, and what it means to be in service to a mission that is a lot bigger than what they started out to be. We also get to hear from Aras about how his work with the Yahe and plant medicine actually brought him the vision for their Farm to Closet initiative. We discuss how the plant medicine of cotton is sacred and why what they're doing with regenerative farming is really so radical for the recuperation of the ancestral plant technology of cotton, as well as how both Christy and Aras have learned to expand their capacity as their company, and their family grows. Enjoy today's wonderful conversation, and thanks again for tuning in, family.
A quick word from our sponsors before we begin this episode.
This episode is brought to you by Magic Fund Amazon. Four Visions Market is proud to be in partnership with Magic Fund, a nonprofit organization that works as a movement for Amazonian growth and indigenous cultures. Magic Fund focuses primarily in the Putumayo region of the Colombian Amazon, spearheading various initiatives that focus on the preservation of indigenous culture, land, and the health of the traditional peoples that live there. Magic Fund recently launched a new campaign that is called Planting Magic. Through this initiative, we are currently fundraising to be able to steward 50 hectares of land in the Colombian Amazon in order to plant and reforest the land with native endangered medicinal plant species. We believe that these sacred plants, if conserved and protected, can bring forth healing for all of humanity in the generations to come. Like many places in the world, the Amazon is under constant threat of encroachment. 17% of the Amazon rainforest has been lost in the last 50 years. An increased interest in the healing benefits of these plants threatens their survival. As these ancestral plants continue to come out of the jungle to be shared with the West, the dire need to plant and replant these medicines becomes more and more apparent. So we invite you to join us in planting magic and leaving a legacy for the future generations so that these medicines continue to accompany humanity for many years to come. Visit Magic Fund Amazon to learn more and to join the movement. Welcome, Aras and Christy. Thank you so much for being here today. I'm so looking forward to this conversation and the opportunity to get to drop in with you both.
Thanks for having us, Mariah. We're excited to be here.
Yeah, super excited to be here. Thanks for having us.
Well, you are two of my dear friends, and it's been such an honor and a blessing to get to witness both of you and how you show up in your daily lives, within your family, as well as within all the work that you're doing in your beautiful company and the vision that you have and that you are stewarding for the earth. And so I'm really excited to get to share you and all that you are with our community and highlight this incredible initiative that is Christy Dawn.
Thank you.
So with that, let's get right into it. I think this conversation today is really important and so interwoven with anyone who is desiring to walk a path of awareness and consciousness. And it has to do with, clothes, which obviously is not the first thing that we think of when we think of how to walk in relationship with the earth and nature. However, you have found a way to do that in a way that brings so much meaning and so much tangible digestibility in regards to how we can actually have an impact through the clothes that we choose to adorn our sacred vessels with. It's a message that has resonated so much for me and really has made a big impact in my life and the way that I choose to partake in the clothing industry. And so I would love to start there with kind of an introduction to those who may not be so familiar with sustainable fashion and what it means to partake in the clothes that we wear from a place of consciousness. And starting with perhaps what's the monster in our closet that most of us don't have an awareness of, what's lurking in our wardrobe.
Sounds like a bunch of monsters in our closet.
Are there?
I think to a certain degree, yes, there are. Babe, I feel like you could answer this kind of overarching question better, and then I can chime in.
Okay. For most people, at least in Western culture where we live in Los Angeles, I can only speak to that, is there's an awakening around the world, around the word sustainability. There's care for organic produce of what we put in our bodies. And, people want to change out their light bulbs and they want to bike instead of driving. And those are really wonderful things. And we really kind of have a hard time wrapping our head around anything beyond that so far, right? Like if this morning Christy squeezed a bunch of celery juice, which she did, and it wasn't organic, we would both have a problem with that. And most people would have a problem with that, probably listening to this podcast. They'd be like, I don't want those pesticides. I don't want to put that in my body. But most people aren't really aware of what they're putting on their body. The skin is the largest organ in and on the body, and it has an incredible capacity to absorb nutrients, sunlight, energy. And for most of us, we don't really wake up in the morning and say, I need to put something organic on my body. I need to put something regenerative on my body, because we just don't really think about that, right? So fortunately for the two of you, you guys are both wearing dresses that are made from regenerative cotton. Mariah, your dress is dyed with vegetables. Christy's digitally printed. But none of those techniques of creating that fabric requires intensive chemicals. In fact, not at all. But for most people, not only are they wearing cotton that was grown using an incredible amount of chemicals just to grow the cotton, then you have to defoliate the cotton. You add more chemicals. And then once you've actually picked the cotton, the processing of that cotton requires even more chemicals, the way we dye it, the way we print it, discharge printing. So by the time we get to the consumer level, where we're wearing clothing, we are draped in chemicals, we're draped in exploitation, we're draped in extraction. There's an energetic frequency to the clothes that we're wearing, but most of us just don't have an awareness. And it's not something that I have necessarily, or I would have if I wasn't in this business. So I don't want to pretend like it's like some sort of like sin that we don't. It's just not really talked about, and we don't think about it that way. And there's not a lot of scientific studies on it, because the people that have the money to run those studies aren't necessarily incentivized to prove out that the chemicals that they're profiting from are actually hurting ourselves. But sorry, that was a very long-winded way of saying that most of the clothes that we have in our closet, they're not just grown and produced toxically, they still have a toxic impact on our body and our being. And Mariah, I think like you could speak to a little bit about like what Taita Juanito shares about weaving, right? And all the clothes that you guys are wearing right now are woven. And so the question of like, what's woven into my clothing? What's the frequency of that is really profound and powerful.
Thank you so much. I love that explanation, and really just touches the heart, essentially when we're really wanting to get to the bottom of things and understand the root. We have to understand this whole process. And so, like you said, this isn't a topic that is on the forefront of a lot of our awarenesses, but there is this desire and this growing interest in making better choices that are in harmony with the earth. And so, what you guys are doing with Christy Dawn is very radical. And essentially, you've chosen to be leaders in a new vision for how we produce clothing. And this is one facet, like you mentioned, of many different choices that we're making on a daily basis that directly impact and affect our relationship with the earth. And so, first, I just want to honor that and thank you, and for this vision that you're stewarding and holding. And I know that it has not been easy at times. It's been, the many roller coaster ride of what it means to ride the waves of holding a very radical vision for change, and evolution. And so I know that following your journey, supporting you in our friendship, I've witnessed so many different chapters as you have dived deeper into what it really takes to forge a new way. One question I have, is in regards to how this was all birthed and how you decided to make this pivot. And I know that you started off more with dead stock fabric, and that was more from an economical standpoint of wanting to be able to, source the clothing the most economical way. And then you realize, I think one of your big messaging is like sustainability is not enough. We have to be then regenerative. We have to be in partnership with the earth. And so this in itself is such a big commitment. And it's really, putting aside this concept of consumerism, of taking. And you mentioned this a little bit, Aras, this relationship that many of us have without knowing, that's really taking and not in reciprocity. And there's a lot of similarities to our company's visions in this way, of really creating this new paradigm of relating to goods. And it's not to say that consumerism is bad and evil, right? Because it's also, we're not creating the understanding or perception of good and bad, but to hold this vision for this new way. And so I'm curious if you could share a little bit about how Christy Dawn evolved into being more than just a dress company, and where the passion, the drive came to start to be, a leader in holding this new vision for the evolution that has become the mission and the prayer of what you guys are stewarding.
Yeah, so when we started Christy Dawn, like you said, Mariah, we started using dead stock fabric. And dead stock is the residual fabric from other larger fashion houses. So we were essentially using recycled fabric to create these limited, one-of-a-kind pieces. And it was working really well. And we were selling out of our dresses, and there was a really beautiful response to it. And as the company grew, and Aras and I grew at the same time as the company, I mean, we're always growing, we realized that we still didn't have a direct connection to the fabric. Who's making the fabric? What is being put into the fabric that we're using for these dresses? And for us, we really wanted to get to the root of that and do it in a really reciprocal way, like you said. And we knew how we were making the clothes because we have our own factory here in Los Angeles. And this was the next step, is how can we get even more intimate with the clothes that we're making? And, like Aras said earlier around the celery juice and eating organic, I remember one day getting dressed in my closet and looking at one of the dresses I put on my body and thinking, I wonder who made this. Like, I wonder what's in this dress, and I'm putting it on my body. Like, and it was also when I was really like waking up to life in my like chapter, like in this chapter of my life, I was really waking up to life and like what I was eating, who I was spending time with, what I was watching or listening to. And then I was looking at my clothing and was like, what am I wearing? Like, what is the energetic signature of this piece? And, around that same time, Aras started studying with Taita and was drinking medicine, and I'll let him speak to it. But I remember him having a few visions in ceremony and saying, he'd come home and share these visions that he'd have around growing cotton and how, he could see the ripple effect of something bigger. But it's a beautiful story. And I think, Aras, you should tell it from your perspective.
Yeah. Thanks, babe. That was really beautiful. I think, for me at least, when we started Christy Dawn, all I wanted to do was make rent. That was it. I was not paying rent. That beautiful woman in the red dress over there was paying rent. And I had nothing. I had started a company before, kind of lost my shirt, learned a lot. So Christy said to me, hey, I want to make beautiful dresses. We thought, that's fantastic. And I would love to make rent. Let's see if we can do this together. And the only thing we could afford was dead stock fabric. We weren't choosing dead stock because it was better for the earth. We were choosing dead stock because it was all we could afford. Real talk, that's what it was. And what we learned really quickly is that fashion is the second largest polluter on the planet. So like any good marketer, we tell the story. Hey, it's dead stock. It's not part of the problem. It's sustainable. And people really resonated, not just with Christy's designs, but they resonated with the story. And for me, that resonance from our community was almost like water on an old seed from my childhood, this idealism that had been paved over by years and years of failure and getting jaded. And it was like, wow, this feels really good. And for 5 years, we built Christy Dawn just using dead stock. And it was a dopamine hit. Like, it felt really good to be like, hey, we're not part of the problem. But dopamine hits eventually wear off. And then it was like, wait a second. The truth is, we're not part of the problem, but we're also not part of a solution. We're just feeding off the excess of a toxic system. So what would it mean to be part of a solution? And at this point in time, we took on private equity funding. We had an investor. And so it gave me space and Christy space. Well, Christy had the space to go have 2 beautiful children. It gave me a little bit of space to go explore more on the kind of esoteric side. And I started studying with our teacher, Taita Juanito. And I would come to ceremony and I'd ask the medicine, like, help me reconcile. All of a sudden, we've got this investment money. We can buy a house. We feel safe as a family. But consumerism in general feels like, unconscious consumerism feels like it's killing the planet. Show me the way forward. And I kept asking the medicine to show me the way. And the first thing the medicine showed me how the water felt when things are dyed conventionally, grown conventionally. And let me just tell you, like, that was a terrible, terrible feeling. Like, it was so painful. So then the medicine started showing me and the family on a farm. And I was like, what is this? And it wasn't just one ceremony. It was like over and over and over again. And then one morning I woke up and I was like, oh my God, like, we're going to grow cotton in a way that heals the earth. Like, forget sustaining. Let's do it regeneratively. And what's really cool is that from that vision, within 3 months, we had a farm in Erode, India with not just seeds, little saplings growing, little cotton saplings sprouting out of the earth. And if we had the time to dive into that story, like, everything was so synchronistic. Like, we were really being supported by the universe, right? Like, we had the courage to listen to the vision and we went for it, and boom, it happened. We were buying fabric from some aggregator a mile down the road in downtown LA. And now all of a sudden we've got land in India that we've leased and we're growing cotton in 3 months. Like, even if you asked me to do it today, I wouldn't know how to do it. And somehow it just happened really beautifully. And that felt really good. But it was also, and we'll get into it later, I'm sure, it was also a little bit of a lesson in all of it, because it went really well to get there. And so my assumption was like, oh, we're being so supported by spirit with this. Of course it's going to be a massive success. And then the lessons started to really come after that.
Well, thank you for sharing about how the vision started coming for this greater initiative and project that has become, one of the main pillars that are sustaining you guys. And me for being able to have the blessing and the honor to accompany you at us in many of those ceremonies and to get to, be your friend and study these plants together. It's been such a beautiful thing to get to witness the way that you have taken the medicines consult and the guidance that you've received through the ancestral wisdom plants and really brought it forth on a lot of faith and really allowed faith to carry you guys through this whole process. And like you mentioned, there's some things that have been very synchronistic, and then there are some things that feel like you're pulling teeth. And so I think that's a natural part of, bringing forth a really radical and evolutionary vision that it's not always super smooth. And sometimes we have this thought that alignment and when things are in the flow or in alignment means that it's all going to fall into place with immense ease and grace. And I think that's really a life lesson too, because it's not always like that. And that's okay. And when we really believe in something and we're serving, a prayer that becomes greater than us, becomes, something that is sprouting from our relationship to nature, our relationship to the force of life. And it's coming from our communion with the spiritual source, then we can really just allow ourselves to ride those waves with a little bit more grace and ease. And, I think now is a great place to get into it a little bit more. And something that, again, is like there's a lot of resonance to what For Visions and Christy Dawn is doing, even though we're obviously selling completely different things. But there's this element of holding this vision for a new way of ethical commerce, a new paradigm of relating to this concept of consumerism. And I've talked to you both a lot about this concept of the fear of failure. And when we set our hearts upon a vision and we go out achieving it, of course, that fear of not being able to follow through with the beautiful vision or that you received in the medicine, or to simply come into terms with the daily challenges that come with executing something like this, it can really throw us through a loop and throw us into a lot of doubt, a lot of questioning, as well as for me personally, bring up into question this concept of, if I fail, what does it mean for the greater business model that we are seeking to bring forth into the world? And so I think for me, it's been, this constant reminder of what it means to be in right action and follow one step in front of the other and just walk in sometimes blind faith and trusting that this is for the greater evolution of this collective consciousness and this global prayer that I believe is truly in transformation during this time. We're living in a really beautiful time when it comes to commerce, when it comes to the changing economy, and there's visionaries and there's this new way that's kind of emerging. I would love to hear some of your thoughts, both of you, on what this process has been like for you once you recognize that what you're doing is much more than just Christy Dawn, that you're actually playing a part in something much greater when it comes to ethical, sacred business. What does that even mean? And then how you've woven in this fear of failure, this self-doubt or just doubt in general when things haven't gone as you had hoped, and then how you navigate the pressures that you both are under as you run this fast-growing company, and how it has evolved over the last years.
I think it's interesting, right? Like, at least for me in my life, I look at like these kind of cycles. And I've had some times in my life where I've experienced a great windfall of literally money. And one of those being when we took on the investors, right? Because we were able to buy a house. And during those times in my life, I tend to double down on my spiritual practice. And it's a little bit of a deceiving thing, because it's easy to double down on your spiritual practice when everything's going well. I double down. I'm like, yeah, look at how spiritual I am. Of course, like everything's going well, right? And my studying with Juanito really kind of coincided with these investors. And I had studied with this Gnostic teacher before Christy and I, and then got to Juanito. And so now this vision comes and we follow it, and everything's going really, really well. And so there's this egoic part of me that's like, look, we're brilliant. Like everything's going to go great. And what I mean by go great is we're going to have a lot of money and everything's going to be easy. And I don't have to change because now I'm going to receive. I'm just going to be receiving, right? Now, on the counter side to that is this whole idea of regeneration. And it's a really the principles of regeneration. The most important one is that everybody benefits from the exchange, right? The land benefits the earth, the biodiversity, the air, the community. And so will I. I will benefit from it. But what that benefit is not necessarily what I have in my mind, right? This egoic idea of like, oh, wealth, and yeah, I'll have a house in Costa Rica and a house in LA, and it's going to be easy, right? And so we got things off the ground. It worked really well. And we thought, wow, the community is just going to take this. The fashion community is going to jump on this because unwittingly, we didn't start this thing to make a difference in the world. We started it to make rent. At least that's what I did. And we found kind of this like incredible solution to one of the world's largest industry's issues. And people didn't necessarily outside of our community really respond to it. You know, people are still trying to get their head around sustainability. Like, what does it mean to be regenerative? And we built this big team and we put all this money into it. And the tree didn't fruit. The tree didn't fruit. And we took more money on it. We said, okay, this is going to be the year. And the tree didn't fruit. In fact, it was just soaking up water. And perhaps we were watering in the wrong place at times too. And there came this point for me where I had to recognize that, man, I'm feeling really disappointed by spirit. I'm hurt. Like, what you told me to do this, and now I feel like I'm out in the middle of the ocean. I followed your wind. I opened my sails, and now there's no wind, and I'm in the middle of nowhere. Like, what am I supposed to do with this? And that's one interpretation of it. But the other interpretation, which I had no choice but to accept because it was too desperate to feel the other one, is wait a second. It is truly reciprocal. I am receiving the bounty of this, but it's not in the way I had thought it would be. I'm being asked to surrender. I'm being asked to get to a place that's so much more beautiful than the place that I had been. I'm being asked to trust. I'm being shown surrender. I'm being shown trust. What a fucking gift. Sorry, I don't know if podcasts like this are allowed to curse, but what a gift. And it's not been easy. It's been so hard to surrender. But my prayer has been, show me how to surrender. And here it is. And I'm receiving it, right? Like, and so a lot of it is just like, it's just the perspective we take. How do we look at it? How do we look at what's here? And, you know, the other invitation is like, the day you plant the seeds, not the day you eat the fruit, right? And also to like, let go of when it fruits. When I was in Texas at this regenerative conference, there was a speaker talking about clover, and the clover seed, it can live for 500 years without sprouting. So can you imagine like the patience of that seed and the trust and the faith in life, and to trust that the seeds that are happening, what is fruiting right now, which feels really uncomfortable, which feels scary, which feels like, oh my God, are we going to be okay? Like the invitation there is to go to trust, to go to surrender. Which we were talking about this last night, right? Christy is like, you know, Christy was like, how can we make $1 million, right? And then it's like, well, we have had $1 million. We still didn't feel good. Maybe it's not the $1 million we're after. Maybe it's a deeper sense of faith. So I'll let Christy talk to that, but that's my answer.
Yeah, I think for me lately, I've been really having to remind myself to zoom out. Like zoom out and look at the profound impact that we're making by choosing to operate our business this way, and like sit in that beauty. Because I think lately we've been so zoomed in on the details of how to get this to work, how to get this to land in someone, to make a purchase, to make the profit. And thankfully, Aras and I get to do this work together. And it's so beautiful that we have each other to remind each other, like, wait, pause for a second. Like, look what we're doing. And to everything Aras said, it's like, you know, we planted the seed 2 years ago, and it may not fruit for a little while. And it might fruit a little bit one harvest, and it might fruit more another harvest. And practicing, you know, our surrender and our letting go and just, like you said, Mariah, like one foot in front of the other. What's the goal? What's the intention? And hold that intention with deep faith and just keep walking in that direction. And I think we'll see that it will blossom beautifully. And to be honest, it is. It just may not be looking the way that we want it to in this moment. You know, business is hard. It is so hard. And like you said, we're going against the grain in so many ways. So I don't know if it's harder than other businesses, but yeah, it's like there's so many lessons that we're learning right now. And thankfully we can tune in to see what the lessons are and learn from that. And that's the one thing I want to say too about regeneration. And what I love about it is that I wanted to speak to the spiral, the regenerative spiral. And like, you know, the spiral is this symbol of, at least in regeneration, and correct me if I'm wrong, babe, but you try something and you learn from it and you grow. And there's no right way. It's like you see what the land needs in this specific case, like our first plot of land. Usually in regenerative farming, you don't till the land, but this land was devoid of life. We had to till it and put nutrients back into the soil. So it's like seeing what the land needs, what our consumer may need, what we need, trying it, and then learning from it, and then growing. So, you know, if that's the intention, we're doing that. And you hold the faith that it will blossom.
Love that.
Yeah, I think that's really beautiful, babe. I was just going to tack on to that as you were talking. This insight just came, but we remember last night we were talking about Kurt Vonnegut's letter to the children, to the school children, about doing art for the sake of art and like writing a poem and ripping it up and don't read it to anybody, but just make it like be in process. And I know for me, if I'm being honest, it's very hard for me to give without expecting something in return. And that's deeply woven into the DNA, right? Like that's something that's not just cultural, but it's ancestral, and learning how to actually just enjoy, like you said, like, wait, it's so cool. We started with 4 acres. We're responsible for 120 acres now. We've sequestered over 2 million pounds of atmospheric carbon. Like, whoa, that's the gift. Right. But what happens is sometimes it's like, wait, wait, you're going to take care of me some other way. And the moment that I go there, I'm having this insight. It's like, wait, it's no longer a gift. Now it's a trade. And the work for me is staying in that frequency of like, this is an offering, stay open to receiving. But that doesn't necessarily come from the place that you gave. It might come from somewhere else, as it's a connected web, an interconnected web. And so that's another one of the beautiful kind of opportunities and gifts and challenges, is like that kind of the mirrors that are abound, right? When we have children, the children are mirrors. When we're married, our partner is a mirror. When we have a business, our business is a mirror. And it really mirrors back in these really kind of confrontational and beautiful ways. But that's another one of them.
Yeah, you know, I think it really comes down to the entrepreneurism as a spiritual path, and ethical business as part of our spiritual path, you know. And once you are walking a spiritual path, I believe that if you're in business, there's no way to separate them. I know Aras and I were just talking before we started recording about 2 different ways to approach it. But if one is really looking at the mirrors in our lives, then the projects that we're stewarding, they become a reflection of where we're at in our growth and our evolution. And you get to the point where you can't separate them, you know, and how we show up in our relationships within our organization, how we show up in the way that we're telling our story, how we show up in the true, you know, integrity at the root of it. And it's not just, you know, what we're putting out into the world, but when we, you know, end our work day, are we feeling in harmony, in balance, and in right relationship with the way that we spent our days, you know? And I think that really is where the true gratification comes from. And I love the reminders that are coming through this conversation, because I think through a very challenging process of deeper surrender, deeper surrender, deeper surrender that I have gotten to witness and accompany you through as your friend, it's like this beautiful gift that has been bestowed upon you guys now, with whatever the evolution of Christy Dawn is, whatever the evolution of your lives are, the wisdom, the teachings that you guys are receiving through this process of opening your hearts and really deepening into this greater connection with nature. This will serve as part of the legacy that you get to leave for your children, get to leave in the fashion industry, get to leave in whatever else comes through you guys in the course of your career, in the course of your lives. And so for me, I'm really hearing this message to zoom out and to really, let go of our attachments to how we think things should be or should look. And when we can do that, the gifts start to come in ways that we could have never even imagined. And that's a message of hope. That's a message of real possibility. And I think that that's also kind of what Christy Dawn embodies in a lot of ways. So it's beautiful to get to hear the ways in which your own journeys have been impacted very similar to the way that Christy Dawn has evolved and learned.
Thanks, Mariah.
So I have a question for you, Christy, in regards to this concept of beauty. And, starting as a dress company, your desire to create beauty, I'm sure, was one of the driving forces into your love for creating the things that adorn our bodies. How has your relationship with beauty maybe evolved through this process, as you have come into greater relationship with nature and the earth and chosen to take this path of more cyclical living, where it's not linear what we're trying to accomplish, but rather slowing down and coming more into the rhythms of our earth mother?
I love that. It's so beautiful. I mean, I think beauty encompasses all of that, which you just said. To me, I feel the most beautiful when I feel the most connected with Mother Earth. It's funny, like the other day I was on a walk, and to some people from the outside, I don't think that I would have looked the most beautiful in my sweat. So like my hair all tattered and windblown and sweaty. And I genuinely felt this sense of true beauty. And I think because when I was looking around on the walk and I could see the trees and the bees and the birds and the butterflies, it was like, this is it. This is so beautiful. And that reflects, that beauty of Mother Earth reflects into me. And it's something that you can't even really articulate. It's just when you feel that deep connection with Source, you feel beautiful, which is, ironic in some ways, looking at my past as a model. Like when I was modeling, it's just purely on how you look, how your physical body looks. And to be honest, I never felt beautiful when I was on these modeling jobs because I didn't feel connected to the earth. I didn't even feel like I was looking like myself. And now, like creating our clothing in this way, it's just like so much has changed since I've started Christy Dawn. Like there's been so many chapters of my life in the last 9 years, if I look back on like the timeline. And the clothes are just like this vehicle of transformation. The dresses become this vehicle of transformation. And my hope is that when you wear a Christy Dawn dress, you feel that deep connection with Mother Earth, and that just ripples into you and you feel beautiful because you're feeling connected to the earth through the clothing, through the garment, through the cotton, and through the process. Yeah.
I love that answer. It's beautiful. Thank you. I feel beautiful when I put on my Christy Dawn dresses.
Me too. Do you ever put on an outfit too where you're just like, this isn't it? Like, I don't feel like myself. I'm not feeling the most beautiful in this. And it's not like where your mood is that day. it's like you put the thing on that carries an energy and you're like, no, this isn't for me today.
Mm-hmm.
And so my hope is that when people put on the Christy Dawn dress, they can really sink into that feeling and let that ripple through to them.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I agree. And I feel like there's so much power in what you guys are doing and in bringing this element of the sacred to something that most of us don't have awareness that it can be sacred. And when you bring in this understanding that all things are sacred and we can partake in sacredness in every moment, every breath, and every choice that we make, then something as simple as the clothing that we're purchasing becomes part of that interaction. And one thing that really resonates with me is this choice to use cotton. And I love that cotton has become the plant that guides Christy Dawn and is kind of like a guardian for Christy Dawn because the cotton is so sacred. And cotton is a plant that has been used for thousands and thousands of years by indigenous people and ancestral communities throughout the world. And I know that for a lot of the shamanic cultures of South America, cotton holds an incredible potential as spiritual power. It is seen as a tool for cleansing. It's seen as a tool that can collect ancestral memory. And so cotton cleanses are actually a really common form of purifications and ceremonial limpias across many different shamanic cultures. And the cotton, just like many other plants in society, has been manipulated and the vibration has been lowered over many, many years of abuse and mistreatment. And our teacher, Taito Juanito, he gives a really great example when in regards to cannabis and the ways in which cannabis is a sacred, holy plant, but through the industrialization and the manipulation into the way that it has been incorporated into society, it literally went through a process of losing its healing powers and its healing potency. And so part of the way in which we revitalize and re-establish these power plants and these plants as sacred and literally return them to their thrones in the plant kingdom is through processes like what you're doing with Christy Dawn. And so to me, it's not chance that cotton was the material that you guys ended up going and making the whole farm to dress initiative from. And I think that what you guys are doing is so beautiful and powerful because when these plants are restored, cotton and these other master plants, we all play a part in really restoring this balance and bringing back the healing power of the earth. We talk a lot about healing the earth, but really, she has the power to heal herself, which is, I think, what a big principle of regeneration is. And one of the best ways we can play a role in that is in simply the recognition of her powers and restoring her beauty and restoring her sacredness. And so that's kind of how I see the cotton that you guys are creating. And when I put on my Christy Dawn apparel, I feel it. You feel the prayer that has been woven into this object that we purchase. And so I think that this is something that really does shift the paradigm when we're talking about how we can utilize the dollar and our purchasing power to bring back this holy communion and to really bring back life as sacred. And so, just like our traditional textiles that are woven in a state of prayer, you too are recovering the ancestral practices of the traditional farming techniques and traditional weaving techniques in India and in your partnerships with the community that you're working with in India. So I'm curious a little bit if you could share a little bit about how that process has been for you guys as you have gotten to be in partnership with these traditional farmers. What teachings have been gifted to you through this process? What insights have you received through this process of returning to the land? I know you have made journeys to India where you got to be, on the ground and of course, just in the designs and the execution of this project on a daily basis. To me, it's like I'm curious how, India became the choice. And then also, did you know that all these ancestral techniques were available before you started looking to India? And then, of course, what are some of the seeds of wisdom that have come through this collaboration?
I don't think I knew how beautiful the ancestral techniques were in India until I really got a little glimpse inside. And I'm constantly blown away by the art form and the the weaving and the intention of the art. It feels like it does not feel like work. When I talk to vendors about how the block printing is made or the vegetable dye, when we went to visit when we were in India, and how he creates these, he said, recipes for colors. It's such a different way of creating art than our kind of American way. It's how can we do this the fastest, the quickest, the cheapest to make profit? And there it's such a completely different energetic signature to how they're creating these garments for us. And I'm still floored by the samples that we receive in our office. And I mean, it's so beautiful. I don't even think I've even tapped into the potential of what we could do, but I'm constantly learning more and seeing more of the art. And I'm amazed by it. Aras, do you want to talk about how we landed in India?
Yeah. So when, after the vision of hey, you guys should grow your own cotton regeneratively. Thank you, medicine, for sharing that with me. But how on earth are we going to do that? So I got home and I was pretty fired up. I shared it with Christy. And so then I Googled regenerative cotton and nothing came up. So then I Googled ethical cotton and I found this NGO called the Responsible Sourcing Network. And I gave them a ring and I said, hey, my name's Aras. My wife and I have a small clothing company. We would love to start growing cotton regeneratively. Could you help us out? Give us some leads. They're like, well, actually, we only deal in the ethical treatment of the farmers. So we don't really deal in how the cotton is grown. But we're losing funding and we have to let go of an employee and she's brand new. She's a rad. You should meet her. So that employee's name was Marin and she was up in Santa Cruz and she drove down and we met. And when we sat and met, I shared with her the vision. And we both agreed India made the most sense because there's so many ancestral traditional ways of weaving and printing and using vegetable dyes. And we both agreed India. Great, fantastic, India. Okay. Now what? So Marin reaches out to a woman named Rebecca from Fibershed and says, hey, my name's Marin. I'm starting to work at Christy Dawn and we want to start a regenerative cotton farm in India. Do you have any leads? She goes, I have nothing for you. Now this is where it gets really interesting. In Erode, India, which is in the south, Tamil Nadu, a man named Nishant, who is the son of a family that is a conventional textile company, he wants to do things differently also. And he's listening to a podcast that Rebecca from Fibershed had recorded months before. This is only 5 hours after Marin talks to Rebecca. And he's listening to this podcast she recorded months before, and he likes what she has to say. And he emails her, but he doesn't have her email address, so he guesses her email address. He says, hi, my name's Nishant. I want to start a farm, and a cotton farm, but I want a brand to partner with. And so then it's here you go. What are the chances that the needle is found in that haystack? Wow, incredible, right? And so we get to talking with Nishant, and we talk about regeneration. Come to find out that regenerative agriculture is really just ancestral agriculture. It's earth worshiping ways of working with nature, right? Because regenerative agriculture is really just mimicking nature. Nature, what do you do normally? Okay, let's do that as well. And so that was a big discovery, and I think kind of at a more macro level, there's certain tenets we talk about internally. We talk about intimacy and how intimacy is really, if you solve for intimacy, you solve for everything else. But sometimes when we're in our project and working in the business and something's not working, oftentimes I get to go back and be like, oh my God, we have to get more intimate. And so there's these invitations to like return, like so many lessons from the farm. I think like the first time I went out and visited the farm, I asked Eshwari, who's the matriarch on that land, I said, what have you noticed farming this way versus farming conventionally? And she said, well, first of all, it's not as hot as it usually is because the chemicals that they use for conventional farming add a lot of heat. It's already very hot in Tamil Nadu and Erode, but it's not nearly as hot anymore because there's no more chemicals. And she goes, and I don't have sores on my arms and my legs anymore. And she goes, as far as the earth, you don't have to ask me if the earth is happy. Just look around. The dragonflies have come back. The earthworms have returned. And hearing that for me was like enough. Like, oh my God, it's amazing. Super cool. But I think a big part of it, and we kind of touched on it earlier, is like, this is not about saviorism. It's not about being a hero at all. At all. And the moment that we go to that space, like we're missing out on the opportunity in the same way where regenerative practices heal, right? The water, the earth, the soil, the community, they heal us. And we actually have some shirts and some hoodies that we've made. And it says, we are the regeneration. It's not separate from us. It's not external from us. We're a part of it, right? And I like to say that like, if we had the patience to study ourselves, let's say we cut our hand and we had the patience to study it under a microscope for 3 days, what we would observe is we'd observe that the body sends specific cells to the cut area to heal it. Okay. Now, this analogy falls apart at some levels, but just imagine that where we are right now from an ecological perspective, like we might agree that there's a cut. And so what is the earth doing? It's sending its cells to go heal it. So who's alive right now? You're alive. I'm alive. We're alive. We must be the cells. We're not separate from it. We are it. And maybe that's just like wishful thinking, but it's a place that I really like to sit with. And not that we're the heroes, but like it's within us. It's not separate from us. And so when we get quiet and we have the courage to begin to heal ourselves, the earth heals. And when the earth heals, we heal. And it's all related.
Thank you. I love that. So true. And this really connection with our interconnection and our interconnectedness is the root, I think, that really fuels this work. And love that story. And wow, so much synchronicity. And then so then there's been some non-synchronicity as well, which we talked a little bit about in the beginning. And I think what we're really kind of agreeing on is that this is this concept of walking in faith, walking one foot in front of the other, and really surrendering to the greater trajectory. I'm curious how you have balanced this within your own personal lives as partners, as parents, within the home, and what it means to be running this company as a couple, and then how you manage it, how you balance it, and how this has also been part of your spiritual growth as you raise a family together too.
Babe, remember when we were studying with George and like we were doing a lot of work every week? Every Tuesday we met with our teacher, George, and he would, help us with any lessons, like whatever was coming up in our life. And I felt like I was really like growing. I was learning a lot. Things were coming to me very easily. Like I was realizing that I had this big toolbox that I hadn't actually like dug my hands into yet. And the second I dug my hands into it, I was like, oh, wow. Okay. I didn't know I could do this. Whoa, I have this one too. Like, this is great. And then we had kids. And then you're like, oh, okay. This is really, these are my teachers. Okay. Wow. Like I thought I was doing the work before with George. Okay. My first kid is here. Now I'm learning a lot. Oh, here comes my second kid. Great. Oh, I have a business. Wow. Okay. I'm learning a lot of lessons here. Oh, I'm also doing it with my partner. Hello, more lessons. And I think like, there's like, so much beauty in it. Like there's so many lessons in our lives right now through experience and wisdom that is being attained through these experiences. And I wouldn't want it any other way. Like even today, like Aras was on a business call walking outside and I took a photo of it. And as I posted it on Instagram, and as I posted, I thought, like, what a beautiful thing that I get to do this with him. And there are other days, trust me, where I'm like, why am I doing this with him? This is so hard. Like, we do not see eye to eye. We are not in alignment today. Like, it is two battling rams. But for the most part, it's so beautiful. And even when we are battling rams, there's an underlying lesson and thing to be learned. And thankfully, I have that awareness to see it. And then we both have the awareness to address it and learn from it. And then it goes back to the principle of regeneration too. But yeah, I wouldn't want it any other way. I mean, we get to create art together. We get to dream together. We get to manifest our dreams with one another. Like, we both hold the intention with so much excitement, and when one is down, the other can pull the other one out and up. And it's just like this beautiful balance and weaving really together that we get to create. And I really wouldn't want it any other way.
Mm-hmm. It's so beautiful. I really celebrate you two as a couple. You are doing such an incredible job at really just walking the path, with showing up every day and everything that it takes. And I love your partnership. I love watching you guys crush it in the world and crush it in your home and your family, and just the love in which that you both hold for one another. It's really so inspiring.
Thanks, Mariah.
Of course. One thing that you just mentioned that I think is really important to highlight, and for anyone listening who is inspired by this grand vision that you are both stewarding and bringing forth into the world, is this concept of expanding our capacity. And I think that you just touched upon it a little bit as you shared, the different levels as things got progressed with both the business and you guys starting a family, and what it really means to be able to meet the growing need to expand our capacity, and I know for Aras, like as you manage the investors and just the scaling and the growing of the company, right, the responsibilities have gotten bigger and bigger. And so for both of you, there's been this need to really rise up and expand and meet the needs of each unique situation as they occur. And I'm curious if either of you feel called to share a little bit on what are some of the key tools that you guys have used to expand this capacity and to meet each challenge, even when you might think that you can't, or like you're managing the most that you could manage, or you're overwhelmed, or the thought of like adding a new project or adding a new initiative, it seems just like completely out of the realm of possibility, but it's what the moment is asking for, or it's what your children are asking for, and so how do you rise to the challenge in those moments?
Christy, you go for it.
That's such a good question. I'm like, when you get the answer, let me know. No. While you were saying that, my body just took a very deep breath. And it actually told me the answer. Like, sometimes I just have to hear what it is that's being asked, whether it's from my children, the business, my partner, life. And lately I've been really learning how to actually just take a deep breath and see how my body feels with whatever it is that's like being asked of me. And this is something that I've learned recently. And it's like really tuning into how that feels in my body and then going from there. And sometimes it's hard to do that because you want to just like take the action, just go dive into it. Cause like, I know I can do it, but sometimes I don't want to do it. And I know it's not actually the best thing for my health or my well-being, or even just like time management. Like I'm a mom, I'm a woman. I can multitask like nobody's business, as I'm sure you can, Mariah, too. But I feel like lately what I've been really leaning on is this deep breath. and like scanning my body, seeing how it feels, and then knowing where to go next. And that might not be like the best answer for people who are listening, but if that's just like one little step to get you to the next step, just take the deep breath and see how it feels before you go into it. And that's me, like very zoomed in.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe Aras has a different approach that might feel more tangible.
No, that's great, babe, that you have that approach. I love it. I mean, I think certainly there are times when each of us need a break and we communicate that to each other. Like, I'm full. Sometimes we'll say I'm full and we'll give the other person a break. And sometimes we're both full and one of us just has to be fuller. But, you know, I certainly have a daily meditation practice. I have a relationship with Rape, a practice there. And, you know, I'd like to think that my spiritual practice transcends any kind of relationship with Rape or Yahe, but it includes that, right? It's there. And when I can, and Christy holds space for me to go to ceremony, which is massive because ceremony is leaving the country and, you know, all of those things lead to it. But I think at the end of the day, you know, Ram Dass has that great quote, like, you can do it like it's a great weight, or you can do it like it's all part of the dance. And then there's the Aeneas Nin quote where like the day came where the pain was too much to remain closed up in a bud, and eventually the flower blooms, right? And so I think it's like, I don't want to take responsibility for getting through it because it's above me. It's above my pay grade. And the more that I can surrender to that and trust, it gets easier. And the more that I make it mine, it gets harder. And there are days where it's really hard and the pain becomes so much that I'm left with no other choice than to be like, I don't want to feel this anymore. Okay, God, it's yours. I'm going to give it to you, God. And then there's days where I'm able to do that a lot better. And it's not as hard, and I'm in the flow. And sometimes it's the pain. Pain sometimes is the best teacher. Discomfort sometimes is the best teacher. But yeah, I like to think that like my biggest teacher is life. And, you know, sometimes I can be a really stubborn student. Sometimes I have to take the same class a few times.
Uh-huh.
I'll also add to your Ram Dass quote, babe. What I love about Aras and doing life with Aras in work and at home is his ability to play. Like, even when times are hard, and I think we both have this ability, and I think you've seen it too, Mariah, like, we both love to laugh. We love to joke and play and dance and sing. And like, even in moments that feel really heavy, we can really play too. And yeah, I love that quote because I hear that quote and it feels like us and how we navigate through life.
Mm-hmm. So beautiful. Thank you both. Those answers are awesome and spot on, and really also very attuned to the different energies that you both hold, right? And the different ways that you both approach life, and why you guys are such a great team. So thank you for sharing that with us and for sharing this beautiful conversation. I love you both and just so proud of you and all the incredible work that you guys are doing. And it's such a special honor to get to share you guys with our community and all the incredible work that you guys are doing to bring it into the Four Visions tribe. So thank you so much for your time today. And with that, you know, I just want to open it up if there's any final words that you want to share with our listeners today, anything that you want to highlight, or just a final message that you want to leave with us today, either of you.
Oh, well, I guess I'll thank you, Mariah, for having us. You know, it's a great journey that we're all on together, all of us, not just the three of us on this podcast, but together. And I'm really hopeful for where we're going. And it's not necessarily always going to be comfortable, but I tend to find the most solace and community in each other. And to anybody listening to this podcast, like, I think there's a lot more people doing really good work than we know. And I think that we're much more capable than we imagine when we let spirit guide us. And I just encourage anybody, if you're listening to this podcast, you're like, oh, that's cool. They went from not knowing what the heck a cottonseed looks like to having a regenerative cotton farm. Like, maybe you're listening and you're like, oh, but I'm in accounting. How does this apply to me? And I promise you there's ways. There's so many ways for us to connect to spirit, and it's not all going to look the same, but we need each and every one of us. We all matter, and we're all here for a reason. And I hope we can all just remember that.
Beautiful, baby. Thanks, Mariah, for having us. We love you.
From everyone at the Four Visions Market family, we would like to thank you for listening to our podcast. We really hope that you've enjoyed the conversation and gained many new insights on plant medicines, ancestral wisdom, and much more. Please remember to visit our website at www.fourvisionsmarket.com for more resources and information on plant medicine and spiritual tools. And please don't forget to follow us across social media for regular updates on upcoming episodes. We are grateful for your support and look forward to continuing this path with you all. Until next time, take care, stay present, and stay connected.